we on? Okay. Thank you for coming. This is an overwhelming crowd today. I'm happy that everybody's able to be here. And you can hear me all right? All right, good. DLB, Daniel Luther Bertrand Smith, born in 1874, died in 1950. And we know a lot about him because of Selected Risks Insurance Company, but my talk is not going to be a lot about Selected because that topic is gigantic. There's so much information there that I couldn't begin to do it and make it super interesting in the 45 minutes that we're going to be here. But he did a lot of stuff. This man, in addition to the selective insurance, shaped what Branchville looks like today. It's a big deal. There, I'm saying it there. Not just insurance. He impacted our business, our community, and he had a very dominating personality. And I think that Mr. Aldo Smith, our guest, Mr. Sayre is going to have a couple of stories to tell us about DLB. I'm hopeful. So he's a Branchville guy. He was born here, lived here, raised his family here, and died here. He was the youngest of 3 children, born to Samuel and Letitia, and he was a member of the Masons, and he was a member of the Branchville Presbyterian Church. I'm saying that because I'm a Presbyterian, so I'm proud of that. And he married Sarah Hiles, and she's from her family farm is in the Pavicating area, Pellettown area, that part of Lafayette. And what's the family that has it now? Hughes?
Hughes used to have it.
Okay, the Hughes farm. It was the Hughes farm after it was the Hiles farm. So,
Charlie Hughes.
Oh, Charlie, right. And they had a daughter, DLB and Sarah had a daughter, Ruth, in 1896. This is a part where you guys are going to have to help me out. I know that he had 2 grandchildren, but I don't know how many great-grandchildren he had. Lynn is one of them. Are there any others from Barbara? Did Barbara have any children?
No.
Okay. So that's an accurate statement on my slide. I thought for sure I was going to get yelled at for that. I couldn't figure it out, but there's only one. Okay. And he built his home on Wantage Avenue, which is right up the road here, in 1903, where he lived the rest of his life. Then he died of Parkinson's complications. So he lived to be 76, and we're all saying he didn't live to be that old, but 76 isn't so bad back then. In 1950, 76, it's nothing to sneeze at. So he did okay. This is the home on Main Street, 14 Main Street to be exact. Jerry Orr lives there right now, and he and his wife lived there for 20 years. About how long did you live? 30 years.
And now I'm back.
And now he's back.
12 years.
Back with the stairs. He got away from the stairs, and now he's got the stairs again. But this was the Samuel Smith home, and so that's where DLB was born and raised. And back. This is Samuel, and I think this is Lizzie, his daughter. So it's DLB Smith's sister. And they're getting decorated for, I know this, I put down the 4th of July. Honestly, when I see this picture, it's listed as the 5th of July, but I don't know why. I think it's the 4th of July. I'm just saying. If it was taken on the 5th, that's all right. But it was then, and this is DLB and his daughter Ruth sitting on the lower steps. And Sharon, I'm going to call you out now. Sharon Smith, and I don't even know your Paterno, also lived in this house, and she just brought me a whole pile of stuff, pictures and artifacts that are from DLB Smith stuff too. And I have a great picture up here in the front of DLB and Ruth sitting just together. It's really, and a grandmother and a great-grandmother of Ruth, so it's good stuff. And now this is what 14 Main. I think think I lived at 14 Maple. 14 Main looks like that in the 1970s and then again in these past couple of years. This is a great shot of a family dinner. There's DLB and Sarah and little baby Ruth in her high chair in 1896. Now I tell you that this is 1896 because he didn't build his house for his family until 1903, so I think they just lived with Samuel and Letitia for a while. Like he didn't get out of his house for a while until he was ready to build. And you know what? I don't know how many of you know how I do my presentations. Sometimes I fill in the blanks with things that may or may not be true. So, one of the things I'm going to say is that DLB seems to be a guy who was very conservative with his money, and he probably waited until he had all the money he needed to build his house and just lived with his parents with his own family until he got ready to build his own house. I'm just making that up. And that's the house he built. It's right here on the corner. This is the barn. That's right next door to us now. That's the horse barn. This, up behind this little tree, is the cupola that was common in houses of that period to let the heat escape through the attic of the house so that it would stay cooler. It's not there anymore on the house, but the interior of the house still has the boxed out section of where that cupola was. So that's an interesting old picture. And that's what it looked like a couple of years ago, and I managed to get over there and take some photographs of it, and the guy that was living there at the time renting was one. The McCains are here, and they own this place now. I forgot about that, so I just, because I went in with Richard, yeah, Richard. So, yes, they lovingly restored this house. It's in very nice shape. So it's not a big house, though. When you look at it, is it 3 bedrooms? Yeah. Okay. So, this is the living area of the house. The giantness of the house comes from the beautiful wraparound porch, so, which is gorgeous. But it was a modest home. And some nice touches. The woodwork inside is beautiful. And he did put in fancy radiators. He doesn't love a fancy radiator. And I find this the most interesting thing. This is the view out of his window, his bedroom window. He could look right at the horse barn, check on it before he went to bed at night and when he got up in the morning. Now, do you have a quick story or a long story about the horse barn and the fact that you would go in and work in that horse barn? Do you want me to hold that? You can sit. I think he wants to stand. Okay. All right. You can turn and talk.
I grew up with Luther Plummer, who was DLB's only grandson, in the Far Hills area. We graduated from high school in 1939, and there was no work anywhere. And Luther said to me, "Do you want to work for darn Lazy Bird?" And I said, "Who the heck is darn Lazy Bird?" Said my grandfather, DLB Smith. I said, "Sure." So we came up from the Far Hills area, and Mr. Smith says, "I want to see how you fellows work." He says, "I'm going to put you to work on my estate, 65 acres, which included the fairgrounds." And so we worked for a month, and I lived in that house with Lou. And after the month was over, he said, "I'm going to make an insurance man out of you." And he gave us a job at Selected. We wanted to live in town. DLB says, "No, you will live with Sadie Silvers." And he called in Frank Weiler, who was living there, who later became president. And he said, "Now these boys are going to live with you up at Sadie's." He says, "They're only boys. And if they need to be disciplined, you will discipline them." So, we went up to Sadie's, we were rooming together, and Mr. Weiler said, "You will sit next to me, and Lou will sit directly across." So we went along, and we used to have coffee in the morning, and one morning Lou put 2 tablespoons of salt in Weiler's coffee. He took a sip, and he went, and he goes, wham, and he hits me in the side of the head.
You know?
Because he's sitting next to him.
So I didn't take anything from anybody back in those days, so I put an arm lock on him, got him down on the floor. He kept saying, "Let me up, let me up." And I said, "Damn it, I didn't do that." So he was an officer of the company, and as we walked down to the selected, I said to Lou, "I guess I'm probably going to be terminated here with my arm. I'm an officer of the company." But Frank and I got along well. He didn't take that to heart, and I didn't either. Lou and I were rooming together till the day of infamy when they bombed Pearl Harbor, and I knew that our lives would be never the same. Lou wanted to go in the Marines, and he said to me, "Let's go in together." And I said, "Well, why do you want to go in the Marines?" He said, "Because they dress so nicely." I said, "Oh, I'm partial to the Navy." He said, "No, I don't go to the Navy." He said, "They wear monkey suits in the Navy." So anyway, we went in the Marines, 5th Division. He became a sergeant and was killed the 22nd of February, 1945. The war ended that year. He left a little girl he never saw, Lynn Jones now. She lives in Towson, Mexico, but she comes every year to the fair and always asks me about her father. Barbara was working for the company also, and she lived up the street here. And Mr. Smith at one time had 5 saddle horses that they were there for his employees and his friends. And so we used to ride with the old gentleman up on top of the hill by the pond. There's a pond up there. And he was very farsighted, very, very intelligent. And he said, "This is where the new office will be." And so that's what they did. They built up there. I remember when we worked that 1 month, we were up on the hill cutting trees, and Luke tied a big trunk of a tree to the truck. He was going to pull it down to the bottom of the hill, and he burned out the clutch, which he needed. Mr. Smith needed the truck because they took the manure out of the stable next to his house every morning. So when he came up, we told him the truck wasn't working. He smacked his hands together and he said, "One boy is half a man. 2 boys are nothing at all. Nothing at all." And they got the truck fixed, and we went to work with the same, with Selected. I sorely missed Lou. We were like brothers. We grew up together in the Far Hills area. So, it was a shock to me when they got killed. I've been friendly with the family ever since. Barbara moved out to New Mexico, and we went out and visited her and stayed a week with her. And we were friendly until she died. DLB, when we went up with the horses riding up on the hill, he says, yes, the new office will be here, and all the employees will build their houses around the pond and all of this area. He wanted to keep everybody under his fist. And Barbara said that, he gave Barbara a lot up there. And Barbara said, the old duffer thinks I'm gonna be there under his fist all the time. He's sadly mistaken. She sold a lot. The boys never would. I enjoyed working for the company and retired. I also was in the Navy for 4 years, 42 to 46, and then went in the active reserve for another 16 years. And so I retired as a lieutenant commander on a pension. I have very good memories of the Plumer family and Mr. Smith, and I'm glad that we came up and did here in Branchville. When we had the fair in Branchville, we used to have the flower show in this building. But we got really too big for the little fairgrounds, and we bought the property down where the fair is now for $55,000. It was 106 acres. Mr. Smith volunteered me into the Branchville Horse Show. So I've been with the fair for 83 years and was president for 13. It's been a good life. I'm 101 years old now, and I have great memories of Branchville, this area.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was great. That was great. I've heard some of those stories before, but they never get old, just like you. Anyway, that's the horse barn. And that you worked in, and that you had to pull the manure out of until you broke the truck. I gotcha. He was a family man. He liked his family, and he made sure that they were always together. As you just said, that's another good story, that he wanted his granddaughter to live next to the home office. So he wanted everybody close by. There's 4 generations on the front steps of the Main Street house, and I don't know what generation Lassie goes into, but she's there. This was out of the New Jersey Herald book, and what I did was, let me see if I can get this straight. So Sarah and DLB are circled in blue. Their great-granddaughter Lynn, that you were just talking about, is circled in red, and Lynn's grandmother Ruth is in green. Now, the person missing from this picture, as you stated, is Luther, little Lynn's dad, who was married to Jean, who's right here. So, and that's Luther's father. Is that right? Okay. I think that's Luther's father. So that's another bunch of generations. This is the Smiths around the 1920s, and they were in their 50s. So it's important. 70s, 40s, 50s. Anyway, they were getting up there in age, and this is when Selective Insurance started. They were this age when he really opened up the actual company of Selected Insurance, which is why I'm telling you, I can't go into the details of this, it's too mind-boggling for me. But business was in his blood long before, because he was only 14 when he left formal schooling. He'd had enough of it, and he wanted to go to work in his father's store. The store was the Smith store, and it was a grocery mercantile store, and it was up in the middle of town where they just refurbished the Selected Insurance building. By the age of 18, he was a partner, and by the age of 21, his father retired, and he was the sole owner of the store, the grocery store.
They have 3 stores.
What I have is that there was one in Sussex, one in Lafayette, and they also said Beamerville, but I don't know if there was actually a Beamerville store. Okay, that was a false rumor, fake news. But he ran 3 stores for a while with his iron fist, because he was always in charge, and then he sold them or got out of that business. And the claim about him is that he wouldn't hire anybody with much more education than he had, because he didn't want them telling him what to do, and that he really didn't trust college-educated people, because they thought they knew everything, and he knew everything, so why would he hire them? So. This is what the store looked like originally. This is obviously in the 20s, but that's the store uptown when it was still a grocery store. It becomes the home office. Now, this is why, again, I'm going to all these disclaimers. I'm not going to talk too much about this, but there was an incident with a horse and a wagon, and he lent it to a friend, and it crashed, and the wagon was ruined, and the horse had to be put down, and then the guy, a couple years later, hands him all his policies that he had collected as thank you for not collecting cash out of his hide. And then there were other incidents where he was involved in insurance. DLB kept doing insurance along with his grocery store. He had, there's a refurbished certificate in the other room in the museum from 1918 where he was an insurance agent for a Continental Insurance Company or something like that. He was an agent of insurance for a number of different companies all along in the teens. And eventually, by the early 20s, he had given his grocery store business over to Van and Hoovel, Van and Hoovel and Fountain Insurance Company later, and Luther B. Plumer, his son-in-law, and they ran the store while he concentrated on insurance. In 1926, he formed the Selected Risks Insurance Company, which became a stockholders corporation in 28, which is why I have that stock certificate from 28. And the evolution of this insurance company and the run-ins he may have had with other people in insurance who then split off and became the Van and Hoovel and Fountain Insurance agent, who became the FMI, Franklin Mutual Insurance, because he had been, John, you can fill me in, he had been involved with
J.R. Harris.
J.R. Harris,
And
but
I guess-
J.R. and DLB did not see eye to eye. So then it's not surprising when you know about DLB's proclivity to want to be in charge. So people would go off, but insurance became the thing in Branchville, so it's a big deal. It's a Fortune 500 company now, 16 offices in 9 states. I went on their website. It's huge. We just think of it as that building up on the hill. Another view of the original home office. That's down the Broad Street side. I was talking to Mickey about when this sidewalk used to come up like 2.5 feet off of the road side. The curb was 2.5 feet off the ground because the road went down, but the building stayed level. And this is the interior of that long and skinny office. I'm going to show you the office again. Go back. It's a long, skinny office. You see, it's not that wide. It's 3 windows wide. So, these are all those desks. Now, take a look at this desk. That we have one of these desks in that room. It is labeled as an original DLB Smith desk because I think he just had the same size desk as everybody else. He did not spend money on himself for things. He just didn't. So he just has the same desk as everyone else. This is DLB here, speaking with Ernest Rowe, the guy that bought that piece of stock. And that's the interior of the original building. Here we go with some more DLB stuff. Rule number 1, you had to live in Branchville if you're going to be an employee of his company. Which is why I'm going to talk about that in a few more slides, but that's an important thing to realize. You had to be in this town. He expected appropriate behavior of you, even if it wasn't on work hours. You had to behave yourself. If he caught you in his town, because it's his town, and you weren't behaving yourself, you got in trouble, and you could lose your job. For Bill?
If he went by your house and you were having a party and enjoying yourself, he would knock on your door and let you know that if you had that much money to spend on a party, you didn't need a raise that year.
In case you don't know that Bill told me that story, that's that. But yeah, he'd take money away from you. He would take money away from you if he thought you were spending your money foolishly. So he was a tough guy. His way or the highway. In 1936, he took that skinny building that was 3 windows wide and made it wider and put bricks around it and made it into the beautiful Selected Risks Insurance Company in the middle of our town with the clock tower, which is now fixed. So exciting. So exciting. Back in the day when the movie Back to the Future was popular, and we would come into town, coming down off Main Street into the center of town, my son, even to this day, he'll say, oh, that's the clock tower from Back to the Future. And that's the inside of that. Mind you, there's no hiding from anybody in this office. You are totally visible. Everything you're doing is right there. I remember this as being Gray's department store, and the 45s are back against that wall. And when we moved here in 1966, my parents went uptown and bought our living room furniture there. And they brought it down in a truck the next day. I mean, that was the cool thing. So, and I went and took that picture the other day. It's beautiful renovation. My car. That's where the sidewalk is now level with the street instead of bashing into the side of your car door. And this is an amazing new entrance on the Mill Street side of Branchville. Of the Selected Insurance Building. And I'm sure you all know, but briefly, it has become renovated into a place where people that are doing business with Selected can come and spend the night or 2 or 3. There's upstairs are rooms, suites, and then downstairs is a meeting room and a kitchen and laundry area in the way back. So if you're spending the time there for business, you have a place to make yourself a meal and take care of your needs. So it's quite a beautiful renovation. We're lucky again to have that. Okay, along with insurance, he had some other passions, and as Mr. Sayre has told us, horses.